If you've got about $57,000 Canadian or $46,000 in the US to spend on a 3-row SUV, there are plenty of choices. But we're taking a look today at 2 options, one from Japan and one from South Korea, to see which one might be the best one for you. I'll be driving this 2024 Nissan Pathfinder SL all-wheel drive.
And I'll be driving the 2024 Hyundai Palisade Urban. Before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yeah, we thought we were actually done with winter here, but we've decided to have second winter. So it's pretty cold today, so forgive us as we freeze our butts off talking about these cars, but it's well worth it because there's quite a bit to go over. This 2024 Pathfinder SL has a 3.5-liter V6 engine, producing 284 horsepower and 259 pound-feet of torque. It uses a 9-speed ZF automatic transmission, and Nissan advertises this as 4-wheel drive. Now, there are a couple of key features when it comes to this vehicle. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's not on the Palisade, but a couple of things to note. We have wireless phone charging, a 12-way driver seat with memory, and a 10-way power passenger seat. Nissan's Pro Pilot Assist system comes on this, which gives you things like adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, and all the fun stuff that you would get with that. You just have to activate it every time you get going. We only have an 8-inch navigation screen on here and a 9-inch driver information cluster, a little bit on the smaller side, but we also have tri-zone climate control to keep the passengers in the second and third rows comfortable. And this is an 8-passenger configuration, so we've got 2, 3, and 2, and then only a 6-speaker audio system.
Over here at Camp South Korea, in the Palisade, we have a 3.8-liter naturally aspirated Atkinson cycle V6, putting out a 291 horsepower and 262 pound-feet of torque. It is connected to an 8-speed automatic transmission coming from South Korea as well, and all-wheel drive system. This all-wheel drive system is not a full-time system. Most of the time you'd be running with front-wheel drive, and when necessary, all-wheel drive. Now, some of the features that you get with this vehicle is a leatherette interior versus a full leather, real leather on the Nissan, a 12-inch instrument cluster display, a 12-inch infotainment screen, as well as a self-leveling rear suspension. On top of that, you get a tri-zone climate control, as well as a very nice 12-speaker Harman Kardon sound system.
Before we hit the road and warm up, we want to talk a little bit about some of the specifications between the two, because I was always under the impression the Palisade was a much bigger vehicle, but in fact, the Pathfinders, the wheelbase is the same between both vehicles, but the Nissan has 25 millimeters longer overall length, 3 millimeters overall wider width, which isn't much, and then 50 millimeters overall for the height, but that includes the antenna. Now, it's not really too pronounced. There are some roof rails on it, so yeah, that might be a little bit less, but exterior dimensions, at least on the Nissan, are greater than the Palisade.
Yeah, absolutely. But on the interior, it's kind of the other way around.
It is, right?
So in the Palisade, you do get a little bit less front legroom in the front seats compared to the Nissan, but for the second and third row, you're getting much more legroom.
Oh, yeah.
100 or so millimeters longer, especially in the second row. So if you want some interior space in terms of legroom, if you're tall, absolutely go for the Palisade. Headroom is sort of mixed bag because the Palisade has less headroom for the third row, whereas the Nissan Pathfinder has a little bit more.
Yeah, and then the cargo capacity is also quite different too. Again, both manufacturers are reporting different numbers, so it's hard for us to get accurate numbers, but total cargo capacity overall, but the Hyundai has 168 liters more total cargo space. Now that's if you fold all the seats flat, including the trunk space, and also basically from the front row back, there is more space. Nissan doesn't publish, or Hyundai doesn't publish, one of the two didn't publish all the specifications for second and third row, so we can't tell you for sure, but for the most part, I mean, even though the exterior of the Nissan is bigger, the interior space overall on the Hyundai is just a little bit better. They've just maximized the space a little bit more efficiently when it comes to the Palisade.
Yeah, one last thing about the interior is that this Urban trim is the 7-seat version. You can configure this with the 8-seat, which, to be honest with you, I would, because in the center now, in the second row, there's nothing in the middle. There's no console, no nothing like that. So I would just go for the 8-seat, and it's a bit cheaper too. It's $500 cheaper for the 8-seat.
Yeah.
So
it all depends on what you need, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But let's hit the road now because it's cold. We're starting off with the Nissan, and then we will go into the Palisade, and we'll come back and talk about which one we like the best. So we're on the road now with the Nissan Pathfinder SL, and it is a nice place to be right now because we've got heated seats, heated steering wheel, and tri-zone climate control. There's not much more you could ask for, but you know, ventilated seats and stuff you could get if you go up with a higher trim. But Victor, let's talk a little bit about the design of this and talk a little bit about how it compares, because even though they are similar sizing, the designs of both are quite unique between the two vehicles, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. The Nissan Pathfinder with a little bit more of the off-road heritage. In here, it looks a little bit more rugged. You have a lot more buttons here. You have these analog gauges that sort of remind us of a little bit of more of a retro look. And I don't mind that at all. I think analog gauges are great, you know, especially when you have a screen in the middle already displaying everything that you really need. On the Palisade, it's a digital screen, but it just shows different types of instrument clusters. So really not that much of a difference. And I like how many buttons there are in the interior. In the back, I have all the buttons that I need, different climate control settings, heated seats. Again, I'm enjoying myself here for sure. And then the center seat in the middle is great too, because I have an armrest, and on the Palisade I don't. I just get a small little armrest attached to the seats. But yeah, what do you think of this interior, Nile?
Yeah, so you know, we featured the Pathfinder not too long ago. It's been a couple months. So this one, not being fully loaded, doesn't come with everything. But yeah, I do like the setup. You know, and I don't mind not having the fully digital gauge cluster, as you mentioned. Infotainment, though, it's a huge win when it comes to the Palisade. I mean, the Nissan's a little bit behind in terms of the tech. This still feels like the same stuff that we featured when we drove like the 2016 Nissan Juke. So tech-wise, they could improve it a little bit. But overall comfort's really good. One thing that I was talking about off camera before we got in is, you know, I'm as low as I can go in this seat, and I've got quite a good amount of headroom. So as we mentioned, headroom's good on this, legroom's better on the Palisade, but I think that if you're a taller individual, you should be comfortable driving this. And overall, the seats are great. I mean, these are Nissan zero gravity seats. They seem to always surprise us that they're so comfortable. You really do feel relaxed in them. But if you're buying a car like this, it's probably because you need to put people in it. So the second row is just as important. So how's the comfort back there?
The comfort in the second row is great. I mean, I have sunshades as well. That works fantastic. Tri-zone climate control. I also have a socket to plug in my laptop if I need to. USBs, charging, everything. Cup holders, lots of cup holders. This is something that every family would need, is cup holders. Yeah. I've got 2 on the door, 2 in the center, and just plenty of space, more door bin space. I think space, again, is great. Headroom, fantastic. Even with the panoramic sunroof, I have plenty of headroom here. I feel very open in the second row with a lot of windows, and I can see the views. The interior color makes the whole cabin looks brighter and more open as well.
You touched on it. We've got a pano sunroof here. The Palisade's just got a singular sunroof, and that would be upgraded if you went with the ultimate calligraphy. Just as this is not fully loaded, you could get some more stuff on here. But I think for the price, you know, if you're thinking about what people need or kind of what they want at this price point, you're getting essentially everything that you would really need at the $57,000 price point, because they are pretty much on par in terms of pricing. So for the most part, as a family hauler, it's great. And you know, sometimes when we feature these vehicles, people say, hey, I don't have 5 people, I just like it for the size and space. Then it's great too, because the ride is smooth, the comfort's good. Interior road noise also pretty good as well. I mean, it is quiet on here, even at 80-85 kilometers an hour. It was pretty quiet.
Yeah, absolutely. But of course, this being a third row or 3-row SUV, we're gonna have to talk about the third row. So first of all, I want to talk about the entry and exit of the third row. Now, with SUVs like this, it's sometimes difficult to get into the third row, right?
Yes.
But
especially for me.
Yeah. But this Nissan actually has a really good design in terms of the seats, that you press a button and the seat lunges forward, springs forward, the entire thing, which we'll insert some clips here. And I think that design is really good, because even if you have car seats that are fitted in the second row seats, it will still work. And on the other hand, the Palisade, it's more of a fold in and go forward type of movements. So I think the Pathfinder has an edge there.
Yeah, and it's again, you know, Nissan has just a little bit more experience with these bigger vehicles because the Pathfinder has been around for so long that, you know, you kind of expect it to have those sort of small details that, again, you know, might not be for everybody. Maybe you don't have a car seat and you don't care, but still, if you do need to put people in the back seat, regardless, it's just a little bit easier on this vehicle. So from a family driving perspective, if you're looking at this, then you're going to be quite content with it. And then, yeah, performance between the two pretty similar. It's nice that this is an automatic versus a CVT, which Nissan typically likes to use. And then even the fuel efficiency is pretty similar. When we did this last, again, a little bit more equipment, so more or less the same kind of results you could expect. We completed our test loop in 8.2 liters per 100 kilometers, whereas the Hyundai Palisade completed it in 7.9, so a little bit better despite it, you know, having a little bit more features, a little bit heavier vehicle. It actually did better, and that's probably mostly due to the fact that the engine is in an Atkinson cycle, which is typical what you would find in a hybrid, which that one is not.
All right, I think it's time for us to switch into the Palisade and go for a drive.
I agree, let's hit it.
All right, we're in the Palisade. First impressions, how's the space in the rear?
Yeah, you can definitely feel that there is more legroom back here. Headroom's still pretty good for me. You know, I'm a big guy, so I still got about an inch or so of headroom overall, but good amount of space. I am comfortable here. We've got tri-zone climate control, just like on the Nissan. We've got our side window sunshades, should we want to use them. However, you do have USB ports built right into the backs of the seats here. So if you've got USB-A that you want to plug in, charge your devices, easy to do that there, plus a 12-volt outlet in the center console. So good stuff there, but yeah, you're right. With the little armrest here, especially for me, yeah, you can put it all the way down and then you can angle it where you want it. So normal people, I'm sure, would be comfortable. For me, it's really just keeping me in my seat. But yeah, it is nice to have that extra seat configurable on this vehicle. That's no problem, but depends on what you want. If you only need 7 seats, then this is a good option for you.
Yeah, and up front, I have 2 huge screens, which works well, and obviously it has GPS built in, and a whole lot of buttons too, even the gear selector. The gear selector's buttons, I don't love it, but I feel like I've gotten used to it now that so many cars have buttons or rotary dials as a gear selector. But overall, there's a lot of buttons. It's not gloss black, which is great because there's no fingerprints.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point, right? Because most, and even with the Nissan, there's quite a bit of it. Here, even in the back seat, there's nothing. You know, we've got big cup holders in the sides. The only piano black really is just like the bezel around the tri-zone climate. So good for, you know, kids, especially getting things dirty. But yeah, definitely for overall look of the vehicle, you don't have to be wiping it down every day.
Absolutely. But one thing with these huge screens that we don't have is wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So up front, in terms of the space, I've got plenty of space here. Everything is pretty open. I have a large storage area under the gear selector, like a tunnel, so you can put your backpack there or your purse or whatever it is. The leatherette seats also feels very comfortable. Memory seats is included, just like the Pathfinder.
You know, as the two of them are priced about the same, you know, we're looking here at no pano sunroof. I notice it. You know, anybody back here is going to feel a little bit more closed in. You know, there's just not as much light coming in. But I think the trade-off, at least again at this trim, is you're getting things like ventilated front seats, the full digital setup, and you know, overall, I think both vehicles have their own looks to them. Both look unique. They're both pretty rugged, pretty masculine, right? You know, there's certainly no, you know, even though the Nissan maybe has a little bit more rounded edges, you know, both of them do have quite a bit of street presence. So, you know, obviously will come down to personal preference between the two, but, you know, they do each have their own commanding presence on the road.
Yeah, but more on third row amenities. This third row is electric. It's motorized, and it's great because I feel like I'm in Genesis territory with this third row. Not only is it motorized, there's also buttons when you're sitting in the third row to adjust your reclination, which is cherry on top again. So if you care more about the third row passenger experience, you know what to get.
Or even if you're storing, if you're using it for cargo, because that self-leveling rear suspension, you put a heavy thing in the back or you put heavy people in the back, then the vehicle will level off the rear end so your headlights aren't blinding people as you're driving by. So, again, small things like that, definitely a key win here for the Palisade.
So we've mentioned a little bit about the performance. This just edges out in terms of the 100-kilometer test loop that we did in terms of fuel economy, 7.9 versus 8.2. But in the city, this does more like 13-ish.
Okay.
So the Pathfinder is a little bit better in terms of the city fuel economy, but this is slightly better on the highway. Now, what about ride quality? How does it feel back there, Nile?
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable. I don't feel a ton of the bumps. And I think we were mentioning just after we finished filming the first segment is, you find that the suspension on these vehicles is a little too soft, whereas the Pathfinder was a little bit bumpy. So depending on what you're going for, again, if you're looking for a comfortable experience, which you should be, then this will be a little bit smoother. Because I do find back here, it's similar to how the Pathfinder drove as a driver, whereas as a passenger it was a little bit bumpier. So a little bit different experience. So this will be smoother. This will be a lot more comfortable, especially if you're hauling family or precious cargo, whatever it may be, back and forth. You'll definitely notice it in this one.
Absolutely. I think this drives a little bit more floaty, but it is very comfortable and it absorbs all the shocks and all the bumps really, really well. And I think a little bit better than the Pathfinder, but you're sacrificing a little bit on the handling because the body roll on this is a little bit more than the Pathfinder.
Yeah, and I noticed that too. I felt I was moving around a little bit more. But I think we've talked quite a bit about it. Let's go and park and figure out which one we would take if we were in the market and kind of go over some of the key differences between these two vehicles as we wrap up our showdown here with the Palisade versus Pathfinder.
Let's do it.
Well, it was a nice couple of minutes when we were inside the vehicles. Now we're back outside in the cold. It's freezing cold, so we want to kind of wrap this up quickly. But we were bad when we talked about each of our vehicles. We forgot to explicitly talk about the pricing. Again, they're both within about that $57,000 price point, and I'd say you're getting quite a bit for both vehicles. I mean, they're both going to cater to more or less the same type of buyer. Somebody who needs 3 rows. Not necessarily using it 24/7, but somebody who wants, V6 engine with the performance and power that you would get out of this, the fuel efficiency. The looks, though, are different. We were talking with the Urban trim on your Palisade. We've got blacked out grille, blacked out badging.
Absolutely.
But then they forgot about it when they came to the back.
Yeah, it's like they forgot about the back. They ran out of time for the exam.
Yeah.
So they left the back all chrome and silver, but the front, even including the badge, it's black. So I'd really like to see some sort of consistency between the accent colors across the entire car, but we're not getting that for this Palisade.
No.
I would say that the Pathfinder looks really good from the back. The front end is not my favorite. I think I would take the Palisade's front end design. I think it's really, Iron Man Transformers looking with these little panels, but the back, not so much. So Pathfinder for the back.
And then, I really do like the interior on the Pathfinder. It is comfortable. I like a lot of buttons and stuff. So, tech-wise, they're both pretty similar. Feature, comfort, size, as we mentioned. There's some keys and pros and cons to each one. So I think, really, if you're looking at either one, you're not going to be disappointed with whichever one you go with. Something like the Nissan might be a little bit better if you're maybe in the front seats a little bit more. You want to be able to fold everything flat should you need it. But, you're sacrificing a little bit on the ride and a little bit on the technology, but not terrible. And then, if you go with the Palisade.
Yeah, and if you go on the Palisade, you get a little bit more of the luxurious feeling in the interior, but you're sacrificing a little bit more on the powertrain and stuff like that. Ultimately, this 3.8 liter is a very old design. It's been around for a very long time. The 8-speed is very smooth, but again, it's very slow versus a ZF, which is super reputable, and the 3.5 liter from the Nissan is a little bit more advanced compared to this powertrain. So give or take, really, give or take. But both vehicles are on the more affordable sides for three-row SUVs,
Yes.
comparing to a Grand Highlander that's way more money.
Oh, yeah.
Even the Telluride nowadays, they've bumped up the price, so the Palisade is actually quite a bit more affordable compared to the Telluride. They're both great cars.
Yeah, you really can't go wrong with either one. With it, whichever one you end up choosing, it's going to come down to personal design, you know, whether you like the inside, the outside of either one. But because both of them have so many similar offerings, that you really can't go wrong. And it's why it was such a good comparison to be able to do, because not only pricing makes sense, but everything else kind of lined up that these are really competitive vehicles. And it's no surprise that I see tons of both on the road. I mean, these are probably one of the two most popular you can get here in Canada, because I see Palisades anytime I sneeze, and then the Pathfinders are just, it's like the default vehicle for people that need 3 rows. So you can't go wrong with either one of them.
Absolutely. Let us know down in the comments below which one you like more, and see if you can convince us which one to pick.
And you can also become a member here on Test Drive and help us get some hats and gloves, because apparently it's still winter here, right? We're
Yeah.
not getting rid of it. But thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.
Thank you for watching. See ya.